Dictation 13. Ready? Let us take as an illustration such a measure as state purchase of railways. This is a typical object of state socialism, thoroughly practicable, already achieved in many countries, and clearly the sort of step that must be taken in any piecemeal approach to complete collectivism. Yet, I see no reason to believe that any real advance toward democracy, freedom, or economic justice is achieved when a state takes over the railways after full compensation to the shareholders. Economic justice demands a diminution, if not a total abolition, of the proportion of the national income which goes to the recipients of rent and interest. But when the holders of railway shares are given government stock to replace their shares, they are given the prospect of an income in perpetuity equal to what they might be reasonably expect to have derived from their shares, unless there is reason to expect a great increase in the earnings of railways. The whole operation does nothing to alter the distribution of wealth. This could only be effected if the present owners were expropriated or paid less than the market value, or given a mere life interest as compensation. When full value is given, economic justice is not advanced in any degree. There is equally little advance toward freedom. The men employed on the railway have no more voice than they had before in the management of the railway or in the wages and conditions of work. Instead of having to fight the directors with the possibility of an appeal to the government, they now have to fight the government directly, and experience does not lead to the view that a government department has any special tenderness toward the claims of labor. If they strike, they have to contend against the whole organized power of the state, which they can only do successfully if they happen to have a strong public opinion on their side. In view of the influence which the state can always exercise on the press, public opinion is likely to be biased against them, particularly when a nominally progressive government is in power. There will no longer be the possibility of divergences between the policies of different railways. Railwaymen in England derived advantages for many years from the comparatively liberal policy of the North Eastern Railway, which they were able to use as an argument for a similar policy elsewhere. Such policies are excluded by the dead uniformity of state administration, and there is no real advance toward democracy. The administration of the railways will be in the hands of officials whose bias and associations separate them from labor and who will develop an autocratic temper through the habit of power. The democratic machinery by which these officials are nominally controlled is cumbrous and remote and can only be brought into operation on first class issues which roused the interest of the whole nation. Even then, it is very likely that the superior education of the officials and the government, combined with the advantages of their position, will enable them to mislead the public as to the issues and alienate the general sympathy even from the most excellent cause. I do not deny that these evils exist at present. I say only that they will not be remedied by such measures as the nationalization of railways in the present economic and political environment. A greater upheaval and a greater change in men's habit of mind is necessary for any really vital progress. State socialism, even in a nation which possesses the form of political democracy, is not a truly democratic system. The way in which it fails to be democratic may be made plain by an analogy from the political sphere. Every democrat recognizes that the Irish ought to have self government for Irish affairs and ought not to be told that they have no grievance because they share in the Parliament of the United Kingdom. It is essential to democracy that any group of citizens whose interests or desires separate them at all widely from the rest of the community should be free to decide their internal affairs for themselves. And what is true of national or local groups is equally true of economic groups, such as miners or railwaymen. The national machinery of general elections is by no means sufficient to secure for groups of this kind the freedom which they ought to have. The power of officials, which is a great and growing danger in the modern state, arises from the fact that the majority of the voters, who constitute the only ultimate popular control over officials, they are as a rule not interested in any one particular question and are therefore not likely to interfere effectively against an official who is thwarting the wishes of the minority who are interested. The official is nominally subject to indirect popular control but not to the control of those who are directly affected by his action. The bulk of the public will either never hear about the matter in dispute, or if they do hear, they will form a hasty opinion based upon inadequate information, which is far more likely to come from the side of the officials than from the section of the community which is affected by the question at issue. Finished.